Well, happy Monday. You can trust that day. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's David Burrows here once again, of course, and episode 595. Yep, we're still here. We keep going, and I've got some more exciting interviews. That's probably what I wanted to say, lined up that I'm really excited for. So keep watching for more coming up in the future for sure. Sarnia Sting on their way to the playoffs. This Friday and Sunday will be the first two games of round one of the playoffs. Go to sarniasting.com. Tickets go on sale tomorrow, if you're watching this live, or if you're watching it after, then you're late. But excited, of course, for the Sarnia Sting and the season they've had, and going to be some exciting playoff hockey. And as usual, myself and my co-hosts will be coming to you live from the concourse to keep you updated and give you our thoughts on what's happening at all the current games. So looking forward to that. Well, if you ever thought of being a world traveler, you're going to want to listen to this interview. Steve Hunter has traveled, hitchhiked over 125,000 kilometers, over, I believe he said, walked 5,000 kilometers, and the list goes on to the countries he has been, the cultures he has seen, different politics, and it's really quite a story. Honestly, I think I could do a documentary on this fellow, but this is really a very unique and very interesting conversation. We talk a little bit of politics and his food as well, aside from all of his traveling and his mindset. Anyway, there's a lot to this one. So let's jump right in. Here is the Globetrotter, I guess is what I called him. Here's Steve Hunter. The show is made possible in part by its supporting sponsors: Blue Water Power Group of Companies, Joe's Discount Tire, and AskGuy.ca. Well, out in the community, this is going to be an adventurous conversation for sure. This is Steve Hunter, and I guess we're calling you a Globetrotter, Steve.
Globetrotter it is, yeah.
You're originally from Sarnia?
I am. I was born down the road, grew up around London Road School, went to the French school. My mom graduated uni in Windsor. We came back, and then I went to the French school, and transferred to the Saint Francois Xavier middle French school, and then jumped to a couple high schools around the city.
Yeah. So you're fluent French?
I would like to be.
Enough to get you by?
Yeah.
To have a conversation, yeah.
I mean, I worked in France. I picked grapes in France.
Wow.
I didn't really live in France, but I was there for a few months, in that one period for a few months in a community, trying to find work picking fruit without a visa. So
right.
It took me a while. So, you submerge in the community so I could communicate with everybody.
Right.
But as soon as 5 people start talking around a table, I'm out.
Right.
I can't follow.
Yeah.
It's just too fast.
So you're in France, and so this is, like, when we're calling you the Globetrotter, like, you have literally traveled and walked with bare bones on your back?
Pretty much, yeah.
What made you decide to wake up and say, I'm out of here, away we go?
It goes all the way back to high school, really.
Yeah.
Because early on in high school, I was picked on a lot.
Okay.
So I really had a hard time finding my clique. Sarnia is a pretty cliquey place.
Can be, yeah.
Yeah, everybody has their little communities that they roll in, and I had a really hard time finding that at the beginning of high school. And then I got into a really rebellious stage, got into a rebellious community, and then fell out with that as well. And at some point, finally managed to graduate and got into a little bit of trouble. Went out to Toronto to live with my aunt. Got my first real job.
Mm-hmm. What was that?
I worked at Imes Packaging at a warehouse in Mississauga.
Yeah.
So I'm 19 at that point, and I got laid off, and I had a paycheck. I knew a girl out in Vancouver. Mm-hmm. She suggested coming out there. My grandpa had hitchhiked across Canada when he was my age, at that time, when he was 19, 20. So I suggested, and he was like, yes, go. And he gave me a bus ticket, and he was like, jump on the bus and go to Vancouver. So I did it, and didn't really go the way that I would have liked.
Okay.
It was great. It was a great experience. I love the city. It's a wild city. It's completely different than Toronto in many aspects.
How so?
Well, number one, it's much warmer. So in the winter, you get a lot of the homeless communities and stuff like that.
Okay.
And it brings different characters. And I think a city that rains so much, it draws not necessarily depression, but melancholy.
Yeah.
And that's great for artists.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Okay, gotcha.
You know what I mean? So like the artists thrive in that. Like Seattle. Seattle's such an artist hub, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think Vancouver is very much like that. You get a lot of this artistic character. It's much less corporation dominated. Don't have the box stores everywhere.
Oh, really?
They had banned Walmart for a very long time. I'm not sure if...
Is that right?
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm not sure if it's still... I hope that it's still not out
Is it
there.
very community oriented out there?
Yeah, I think there's like my grandma said before going out there, it's going to be great for you because people wake up later.
Oh, right, yeah. You like to sleep in, do you?
Yeah, oh yeah, especially back then.
Yeah, right. I think we've all probably had that phase at some point.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So you're on the bus, you get there, and you step off the bus,
Yeah.
and then what happens?
Stayed with this girl for about a month, didn't really work out, ended up selling merch door to door. And there I found a bunch of people, and we'd gather at the office in the morning, do the like, yeah, go team,
Yeah, right.
get out there and sell. And then we'd go out and sell. And we went to Kelowna, Chilliwack, Abbotsford, all the surrounding areas of Vancouver on road trips. And I just loved it. It was great. It was great to be out into other places, getting this experience, you know what I mean, with people that I knew. And we'd go out for a couple drinks every now and again. It was just really great fun. It wasn't sustainable. I didn't make enough money. I was living in an apartment with 6 people.
Wow.
Because we're going door to door, and one day I'll make $100, the next day I'll make 10.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it just wasn't.
There's no consistency in
No.
that financial.
No,
Yeah.
I mean there were people that were really good at it,
Yeah.
and they could kill it. I was good, but I wasn't good enough. And
Yeah.
like it depends on the merch that we get too. Like Midas, we did 3 oil changes for $25. You didn't even have to sell that. It was
Right.
just, oh, you got 4 cars in your driveway. I'll give you 4 of them.
Right.
All these Indian families from India, Pakistan, a lot of them, they're pretty big families in these pretty big houses out in Surrey, and they'd have 4 or 5 cars.
Right.
And it was only common sense. It was like, you spend this much, we're going to give you this, and you're going to save this much.
Right.
And if they open the door, chances are we have a good chance that they'll probably take it. Now, the problem is when you sell that much stuff, you want to get an appointment at Midas, it's going to be pretty backed up.
Oh, right.
That was kind of the crux.
Probably didn't tell them that, right?
No, right? Yeah.
So now you're done with door-to-door sales, and because I would think that, like, for most people, the choice to just say, I'm out of here, and where am I going? Like, you sort of had a direction, Vancouver, right?
Yeah.
But like, you got to eat, you got to live,
gotta eat.
So to take that risk, I mean, even at a young age like that, where you're really learning life and starting to grow as a person. Was it an uneasy feeling, or were you just like, I'm fine, I'm going?
The first month was really tough because that friend that I went out there to stay with, she didn't really invite me into her space. And I wanted to have a space.
Right.
So without that door-to-door community, it would have been pretty tough. I probably would have ran back home sooner. Then I got into telemarketing, which I absolutely hated, but it gave me a paycheck,
Right.
and I could pay my rent. And I rented with one of the guys that I worked with, going door to door, and then I met people through there. And it was downtown, right in the downtown center of the city, And there were a lot of, wanderlusty people working there that didn't really know what they were doing, and I could relate with a lot of those people.
Right. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, and like everybody seems like there's a whole bunch of these telemarketing places, and 3 months you're like, okay, I'm done with that one. Then you go down the road, go to another one,
right?
See this guy, that girl, and this guy also working there because they left the other one,
right?
And you guys kind of hopscotch between all of these places, right? Because selling stuff on a telephone is just
been there, done that.
Yeah.
Too. But sometimes you got to do whatever you got to do too.
Yeah.
You got to feed yourself.
And I had no direction really, and I didn't really like school. Like I said, I didn't really fit in at school, so I really rejected school, and it was really tough to find my way. Now, lived on the street. Friend of mine came out with her mom, picked me up, and we drove across Canada in their van for the next month.
Oh wow!
And I stayed in small villages, Salmon Arm. I don't even know, Fort Saskatchewan.
Oh yeah.
Like really out there where her mom went to visit her old friends that she knew from 25, 30 years before. And we stayed with them, and I really got to see the countryside.
Wow.
And I read books.
What a great way to see it.
Yeah, and I read books in the back, and I never really read books before. Like I read, I still remember Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And that's the first book that I read where I'm like, holy crap.
Right.
Okay, this is literature.
Yeah.
Like this can actually make me visualize as opposed to reading and going,
yeah, right. Like the books we were told to read in
yeah,
English class
exactly.
or something.
I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for To Kill a Mockingbird. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I read it 10 years ago. I love it. It's one of my favorite books because of the way that she does the coming of age.
Yeah.
But when you're 16 years old,
Yeah.
you haven't come of age.
The only one I liked was Death of a Salesman, but that was
Nice and short.
right. Right, and we could all relate at some point into that book, right?
Yeah.
So you've been across Canada, and then now you're after that adventure.
Came back to Sarnia, right back into telemarketing when RMH was open.
Oh yeah.
Again, it was a wash. I went back to Toronto, and then my uncle got me a job in a kitchen, and I didn't really like it, didn't love it. I was let go after 3 months, went and applied for a new Casey's in Mississauga. I was in Brampton, and they were like, oh, you want to serve tables, you want to bartend? Well, we're not going to give you that job, but you can work in the kitchen.
Right.
And I was like, oh no, not the kitchen again, but I need a job, and I want to rent a place around the corner from there to get out of my aunt's place. I'm 20, I think I'm 21 at this point.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't want to live with my family. I want to live on my own.
Right.
Like I did in Vancouver, except stable.
Right.
Yeah. So I took that kitchen job, and my boss, I was really into hip hop at the time.
Oh, yeah.
I had this like fantasy of being a rapper or whatever. My main thing was that I loved writing lyrics. So I got into poetry as well. So I got into Bob Dylan, and I got into Tom Petty and all the great writers of that period in music. And so this kitchen manager, he's actually a hip-hop DJ.
Oh.
So we got along really, really good. And he was the first person I worked for where I wanted to work for him.
Nice.
And it totally changed
That's
the
a
game.
totally different feeling, isn't it? When you can get up and look forward to going.
Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly it. And you're like, wow, I actually like doing this.
Yeah.
I actually want to be here every single day. And I accelerated. I was great. We started with 5 people on the fryers, and I was the only one left after a month and a half.
Oh, wow.
Because none of them wanted to do it, and I had to.
Yeah.
They all lived with their parents. And
right. You were forced to.
Yeah.
You didn't have much of a choice.
No.
Not going back to the Vancouver lifestyle.
No, definitely not.
So this he's a hip hop DJ.
Yeah.
So that clicked between the two of you then?
Yeah. I learned a lot of, as far as like underground hip hop and like music I didn't really know about. And just hanging out in his space with his tables and all that, and then going to some of his gigs. he didn't do big shows or anything. He'd DJ at a couple bars.
Right.
And I'd go hang out with him and have a couple drinks and chat music. It was great. I moved through that kitchen until I was at his spot, doing the reading out the chits and grilling. But from there, it seemed like I needed to move in order to grow.
Yeah.
I was dating a girl there, and it was my first real girlfriend. We'd been together about a year, as long as I'd been working there almost. And she suggested going to college. So I went to cooking school at Humber College. And I switched to a little bit higher end kitchen. I would say today it's the same thing. It's just another corporation with a different name. It was Circor instead of, I don't remember what the Casey's branch was. And then I did 1 year of the culinary, went to London, Ontario, and I worked at Michael's on the Thames briefly, and just hated the chef. He was not at all supportive.
Wow.
Like you're
that brings you down, doesn't it?
Well, and you're a young cook that wants to be a good cook.
Yeah.
And you're ambitious, and you know that you've got talent, and this guy's telling you the exact opposite.
Right.
And it's like, why? Why wouldn't you give everything that you have to support that person, lift them up, and make them a better cook?
Right.
Like, that's
maybe he
you.
thought you'd be better than him.
That could be it, right?
Right.
I was miles away at this point,
Yeah.
and I worked with a guy who was great, and he loved him because he was good at it. But yeah, that's, you give to people, they get better.
Yeah. That's usually a pretty good philosophy to live by.
And Malcolm was like that, you know what I mean? He
Yeah.
didn't rinse you because you chopped the onions wrong.
Right.
He just showed you. Mind you, after 5 times, I can understand why you might get impatient.
Sure.
But first time, maybe just show the guy instead of losing your cool because you're stressed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was working part-time there. I wasn't earning enough money to pay my rent because the pay was really low. So I worked part-time also at Jack Astor's.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy at Jack Astor's was like Malcolm, except older, not a DJ. He was super cool. He saw my ability to be really fast, and he was like, quit that place, come work here full-time, and I'll give you a raise. Wow. So I quit the fine dining, circa 1986 hollandaise salmon.
Right.
And I went and worked at Jack Astor's full-time. And then sometime later went to Banff to work in a hotel for the Banff Springs Hotel. I went out there with my suits and everything, didn't get the job. Ended up working in a fine dining Italian, still not quite fine dining yet. I worked there a while, got into a lot of trouble, partying, having a great time. Banff was fantastic, but I was 24 and I just let loose.
A little carried away.
Very, very carried away.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it led to me living with 8 guys in a 2-bedroom apartment.
Wow.
One of them having a caravan, wanting to drive across Canada. So we loaded up in his caravan, 9 people, and we all drove with a kayak on the back and all this stuff. And then we drove out to Tofino, and we stayed on the island a little bit. And then I stopped back in Vancouver. And then another year passes. After about 2 months, met a guy, and he introduced me to a chef, and that's my first professional kitchen job.
Right.
I worked really hard to prove myself, but unlike most, like 1-star, he paid me enough.
Right.
1-star restaurants, they don't pay you enough. I get it, because you got 6 people in a kitchen. Because of the intricacies that you need to build on these plates, you have twice as many people.
Right.
So you pay them half as much.
Yeah.
But it's just not sustainable.
At this point, Steve, you like we went from 19 to 24.
Yeah.
In that time frame, what did you get out of that? That whether you realized it then, or maybe you didn't realize it at the time, and now you look back. What did you get from all of what you've done in those 4 years?
I mean, at that period, at that stage, I thought I'm going to be a cook for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That's it. I found my passion, my drive. As soon as I started at Il Giardino, the guys that I worked with, they were like me. You know, I read, when I first started there, I read Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential.
Okay.
And it explains all the stuff about the the back of the house, you know, like what happens in the kitchen, and the army-like camaraderie, and the way that the line is set up, and mise en place, and preparations, and the temperamental chef. My chef was really temperamental, but he was different than the other guy. He actually wanted you to excel.
Right.
He was crazy temperamental, at times way, way, way off the chain.
Like Hell's Kitchen type?
Yeah, worse.
Right.
But when you did something good, he acknowledged you.
Right.
And he showed you stuff, you know what I mean? And we could have a beer afterwards and let go of the other stuff.
Right.
I learned so much in that kitchen. The problem is I left too early because I was anxious to get on the road. So the road is starting to trigger me at this point.
Okay.
All that stuff that I had done, living on the street, wandering across Canada, the bus, all that stuff is kind of like, I want to see what this has in store for me. Somebody gave me Jack Kerouac On the Road, told me to read it because it seemed fitting to what I thought. One of the guys I worked with gave me a backpack for $40. It was a 70-liter Canadian brand. It was made of canvas.
Oh.
Didn't have a waterproof. Didn't need one. It could take so much water.
Is that right?
Yeah. I had that thing for the next 12 years. It finally died when I was in Slovakia. And I almost went into mourning.
Did you have a ceremony?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have burned it if it was possible.
Right. Slovakia, you got there, did you?
Yeah. The backpack was not comfortable. I walked all the way. No, sorry, I'm wrong. I walked across Spain with that backpack. It was absolutely not comfortable. When it finally died after that, and I got a new one, I realized what a comfortable backpack felt like.
Why did you keep it all that time if it was uncomfortable?
I just didn't know.
Right.
I had no
just
idea.
Thought all backpacks were uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like some on that journey walking across Spain, there's so many other people walking across Spain. Somebody eventually came up to me and was like, "You know your backpack's not fitting you, right?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like,
there's that many around doing that, eh?
Oh, the Camino de Santiago is a very famous, very popular pilgrimage way in Europe. It is spread all over the world, so you get people of all kinds. A famous writer or actor-writer or TV character from Korea went on that way, wrote a book about it. Lots of Koreans.
Is that right?
Yeah. Wow. Same thing happened with Paulo Coelho. So Paulo Coelho wrote The Pilgrimage in the mid-'80s.
Okay.
It was about the Camino de Santiago, and that's when it kicked off.
Wow.
That's when everybody started going there. And then the Spanish government put all this money into it to turn it into an aspect of their tourism.
Right.
And that area that you go through, it's not developed at all. It's still in the medieval times. Like there's a lot of small villages that are they've stood frozen in time. It's amazing, but they don't have any development. So bringing all these people there brings them something.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was good for them to some degree.
Yeah.
The year that I walked, they told me 40,000 people walked it.
Wow.
So these tiny little villages are seeing 40,000 people a year.
Yeah.
That's going to change your village quite a bit.
Right, yeah. Economically and well, the culture too.
It's no longer a peaceful little village.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you've got people from all over the world drinking sangria in your center.
Right.
Getting hammered until, 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
Not every day, but still happens, and
it changes things.
Yeah, it changes things a lot. And so you'll have those people who are disgruntled about it, and those people who don't mind. So it's interesting to get that experience. Mm-hmm. Anyway, rewinding back to my second year in Vancouver, like I said, I got that backpack, so I decided to hitchhike across Canada. I'd hitchhiked one time from Kelowna back to Vancouver, and one time when I was a kid from out near the Pinery, Kamlaki area, right, into town with all my friends from May 24.
Right.
It rained, and we were ruined. We were going for 2 nights. We stayed one night, and the next morning it was just, there was mud everywhere, no food.
Food's kind of important.
Complete disaster. So we all hitchhiked back into town in a white delivery van, in a panel van. Anyway, so this time I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to hitchhike all the way across Canada. And I ended up in Montreal, and I worked in a fine dining restaurant there. And then about a year passes, get more experience. I go out to Calgary to live with a friend of mine, and the kitchen, the chef was all right. The kitchen was a little bit upper end, but it was very slow, and I didn't like Calgary at all. No, I don't know, it was like really materialistic. Oh. Like if Toronto was materialistic, Calgary was because of all that oil money that was coming in the mid 2000s, you had a person selling their house for 3 times its value, and then leaving their car on the side of the road because they don't need it anymore because they have a Mercedes.
Right.
It was just like, wow.
Wow. Yeah, like, wow.
Yeah, I just don't fit into this at all. Like, I don't want anything to do with it, actually. I hitchhiked up to Alaska because back when I was a kid, 17 years old, sitting on my buddy's porch, I had this idea that I wanted to go to Yukon.
Okay.
My friends laughed at me. They're like, why the heck would you want to go to Yukon?
Yeah, what's in Yukon? who says that?
And I'm like, well, I just think it'd be amazing. We could have a cabin, and we could grow our own weed, and we could make our own beer, and paradise out in the Yukon.
Right? Living the life.
Yeah, never mind minus 65 in the winter.
Oh, yeah, that.
So, yeah, I hitchhiked up there. I went from Calgary to Prince Rupert, took the ferry up to Juneau, Skagway. Yeah, Skagway, and then from Skagway to Whitehorse, up to Dawson City, across the top of the World Highway, and already I'm absolutely in love with the road.
Yeah.
I'm just like...
You're hooked.
Yeah, totally hooked. I know I'm going back to Vancouver. I've actually got a girlfriend there. I want to get back into a good kitchen. I want to progress, but I want to figure out a way to bind the two together. Mm-hmm. When I was in Banff, I met a lot of Australians.
Okay.
A lot. Like in Whistler, it's, 70% Australian, 30% everybody else.
Okay.
And a bunch of these Aussies were like, oh yeah, you should come visit me sometime. A few years passed. It took me quite a while, but once I was up in Alaska, I was at Denali National Park. I wasn't very good with my money, and I like to drink, so my budget was kaput.
Right.
I couldn't go into the park. I didn't actually get to see Denali Mountain.
Oh, no.
I wandered around the exterior, but at that point I think it was 90 kilometers to get to the base of the mountain. Mm-hmm. And for me to imagine walking 90 kilometers with a backpack at that time was insane. I brought a tent. I did not use it once. Wow. So I was terrified of the outdoors. I wasn't.
That's interesting. I mean, you're on the road. Like, you're going to think, hotels aren't cheap, so where am I going to stay?
Yeah, and I just couldn't. There were a couple of hostels here and there. I found friends along the way that let me stay at their place or whatever. But I was terrified of the bears and the cougars and all that. And, you know.
Oh, that thing. Yeah, I get you.
I just wasn't prepared. I was way over my head, you know. And I'm at Denali, and this girl walks into this hostel. Everybody's coming in, you know, from being outside and hiking and stuff.
Okay.
I've been hiking that day up a little mountain down the way, and in comes this girl, Athena, and she's got these huge hiking boots on, these really skinny legs.
Okay.
And big dready hair.
Yeah.
And like really, really skinny, and just like totally stuck out. She was really dirty, and she had this massive backpack and big camera, and she just threw the backpack on the ground, and I'm like, where the hell did you just come from? And she'd just spent 5 days hiking in the mountains.
Oh, wow.
And she's got pictures of these bears and stuff, and I'm like, how the hell did you do that? And I'm terrified of this.
Right.
How do I get there?
Yeah.
Show me the way. And we started chatting, and she'd just spent the last 10 years traveling around the planet.
Wow.
She'd been to 50 odd countries, and we went hitchhiking together to a southern part, Seward, Kenai Peninsula, through Anchorage. I'd say we spent about 5 or 6 days together, and I just listened to her, you know, and from that moment I was like, wow, this is it.
Right.
I hitched back to Vancouver, got into a decent kitchen. Things with my girlfriend were pretty decent. She was from France. She decided she wanted to go work in the countryside of Quebec for her career. I decided I wanted to go to Australia for my career. So she bought a hatchback Civic, and we drove it across Canada, and we split ways in Montreal. I came back here. She went up north, and then I some months later I flew to Australia, and that was the beginning of something I totally didn't expect.
Right. So this is like, and I'm just listening to you,
Yeah.
and you're just telling these stories, and I'm just, one of the things that I'm thinking about in all of this, especially at a young age, is like you were continuously stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, yeah,
And you've really grown from that, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
that's like good for you, because at a young age, that's hard to do. We try to teach that to young people. Say you gotta step out of the box. But how did you do that? Like what made you get out of the box?
I just never fit in it.
Yeah. Ah, right.
That's the bottom line. I did have community in Vancouver. I made a family atmosphere in Vancouver. When I left to Australia, the last day, so I flew from London, I think, to Vancouver, stopped overnight, and then flew to Auckland. And that night, I had like 50 odd friends come to one bar to say goodbye.
Wow.
And they were people that I'd met all over Canada. But everybody had gathered in Vancouver at that point in their life.
And what was the okay? Let's talk about communication, because I mean, this is at a time. This is before social media.
Oh yeah,
FaceTime, all that stuff. That
Facebook
we
had come out when I was in Montreal, so
Okay.
You have some social media outlet.
Yeah. Okay.
2008. So I think.
But you would regularly communicate back home to let them know, hey, I'm still alive, I'm still good, or no, that was just, you just went and...
I wonder what my mom would say about that.
Oh, okay. He didn't call home enough.
No, yeah, exactly, right?
Okay.
I think it was, so pre-Facebook, I definitely spent more time chatting on the phone with my family back home.
Right.
Once Facebook started to implement itself and Messenger became a regular thing, then you don't need the phone.
Right.
Funny little story. When I was my last year in Canada, I didn't have a cell phone.
Okay.
They were already a regular thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't have one because I didn't want anything to do with it. You know, I was an outlaw.
Right. You rebel, you.
And I had a piece of paper, like a notebook, and I had all my friends' phone numbers in it.
Yeah.
And I'd go to a payphone, throw in a quarter,
Right.
and I'd call that number, and hey, what's going on? What are you doing? And it became harder and harder and harder to organize meeting people because they were getting more and more independent or dependent on their cell phones.
Right. Yeah.
But at the same
time,
where
we are now, right?
right? And so at the same time, I leave. So when I'm in Australia, in the beginning, I think I'm going to do the exact same thing. Only the payphone is 50 cents, and it's every 2 minutes.
Oh, wow. Oh, boy. So new plan.
Yeah.
New plan.
Cell phone the next day.
Right?
All right, sold.
50 cents for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It said 50 cents. I'm like, okay.
It's almost like they were like, buy a cell phone, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Get the net.
Because we're going to take these payphones out of the ground pretty soon anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's probably the message they were delivering. That's exactly what happened. Save one payphone that I saw in Guatemala last winter. There was a woman on it using it. I'm like, what? Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, so the getting out of the box, I do fit in, but at the same time I feel like I don't fit in, and there's just like this like draw towards curiosity. Like mass amounts of curiosity. This is what led me to cooking. You know, in the first place I didn't like it, but when I started to realize how much stuff I could learn, it was endless. Like
when's the book coming out? Is that
soon? Very, very,
is
very
that
soon.
something you're working on?
Oh, it's worked on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
like, why wouldn't you? Like, that's just
I've written now 3 manuscripts. One of them is fully done, edited, just waiting on cover design right now. Wow. Actually, like, hopefully cover design is done Monday.
Oh, really? Wow.
And hopefully printing. So I'm self-publishing. I've had a really hard time because, like you, people meet travelers who have, you know, lived extensively, and they're like, "Why don't you write a book?" And all of them do.
Right. Right.
And I've been writing since I was 15.
Oh, wow.
I didn't go to university for literature, but I've been writing. And on the road, you have a lot of free time. So I read a lot. Like when I first started reading, it was incrementally. When I started traveling in Australia and then into Asia and stuff, I started reading more and more and more. Now I've read a couple hundred books.
Right.
And
good for you.
And for me, when my writing level changed was when I started reading. I started learning other people's style and stuff like that. And
most of us don't read the books beyond school, whether it's college or university. We kind of tend to, okay, I've done enough. I don't want to read anymore. I don't know what it is about reading that people go, that's boring. I don't want to do the book report, or I don't want to.
Because of that, because we were forced to do book reports.
Well, you're told you
stuff,
had to, right? Yeah.
We weren't really given the opportunity to say, well, reading is fun.
Right.
It's enjoyable.
Well, I think it was put to me one time. It's like if you went up to somebody and said, "Here's 12 books, go read them." People would go,
yeah.
But if
totally overwhelmed.
But if a book is 300 pages, if you read 10 pages of a book every day, you'll read 12 books in a year.
Yeah.
Now,
there you
can you do 10 pages in a day? Well, yeah.
Definitely.
So I think it was just maybe how it was presented to us. You know, like here's a book, you got to go read it. And that's it. We didn't go, if I just read 5 pages of this book, I'd have it done by the end of the week, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I think it's also the pressure that's put on you to read fast. And if you don't read fast, then you feel stupid.
Yeah. I've always had trouble with it, and I still have to read 2 or 3 sentences 2 or 3 times.
To absorb it.
Totally. And I've just learned I've gotten better at it.
Yeah.
Because I read.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And I was the same.
I don't pick hard read books and try to go with easy reads, I call them. Right? But I actually did audiobooks for a while. And I said to my wife, look out, because I'm going to be super smart, because I was doing like 5-6 books a month.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Wow. Nice.
You know,
yeah. But when you're reading that much, like, because I'm there, not right now, but when I was out in Tajikistan, so I just finished hitchhiking from Singapore to Europe. Right. Took me 3.5 years because of COVID, 30,000 kilometers. I spent a lot of time out in the steppe and in Tajikistan, places, really isolated areas where I was so thankful somebody gave me an ebook.
Right.
Because I had 400 books on there.
Right.
I read so much.
Yeah.
And as you said, like 5 books in a month, it was hard to retain the information that I wanted to retain, right?
Yeah. Our brains are only so big, right?
Like there was so much stuff coming at me. I was like, wow, this is so great. But I could only hold pieces of it.
Even a genius only remembers 35%. So
yeah,
and I'm no genius. I don't know about you, right?
No. Far from genius.
Let's talk about COVID for a minute. There, you mentioned that. Where were you when that hit?
Kazakhstan.
Wow. What do you have anything to compare it to as far as how where you were dealt with COVID as compared to, say, Canada dealt with COVID?
Well, here I think people themselves took it much more seriously. I think that's the number one difference.
Okay.
Some people so first off, I'm not in the countryside. I'm living in the biggest city in Kazakhstan.
Okay.
It's a international city. It's 3 million people. It's an oil capital of all of Central Asia. So there's money there. There's development. There's movie theaters. I don't want anybody. Oh, Kazakhstan. Well, is there anything out there?
Right.
No, there's a lot out there.
Right.
There's a lot of progress. If Kazakhstan is the central hub of progress in Central Asia.
Okay.
So it's such a big country. There's not really a lot of developed areas, but where there is development, it's pretty big.
Right.
So I'm in this place. Which is similar to Toronto, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Maybe more like Vancouver, 3 million.
Okay.
And some people took it seriously. The main people that took it seriously are the rich people.
Oh.
You know, poor people don't, I wouldn't say poor. Lower middle class people don't have the time to worry about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
And there was no, what do you call it? The money that we got here? The $2,000 a month?
Oh, the CERB? Yeah,
CERB.
right.
There was no
There was
CERB.
no support? Okay.
No. They got, I didn't. They got $50 once.
Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't get CERB from here. I didn't get the $50.
You were missing it all over.
Oh yeah, I'd worked the whole winter, so I got there in October. Got a job in a private school, so I've been teaching English for about 3 years at this point.
Okay.
And I was teaching in a private school, teaching English. I had about 150 students from grade 1 to grade 6, and you know, singing songs and dancing and all that jazz.
All that jazz.
Stand by me and call me maybe.
Right. Wow.
Depending on the age group.
Yeah, okay.
And what was I going to... Oh, yeah. So I worked there until COVID started, which was beginning of May, mid-May.
All right.
I think it was mid-May. And I'm going to leave end of May. So I'm 1 week away from leaving, getting back on my horse.
Right, giddy up, here we go.
To hitchhike the rest of the way to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I started in Singapore. It took me a year, 20,000 kilometers. I get to Kazakhstan. I got no money left. Get a job in a school. This is my plan. This was my plan. I'm going according to my plan. I thought I was going to work in China. I needed to get paperwork from here. The process of getting that paperwork from here and the possibilities of somebody in China filling it in wrong, I was just like, no. I don't want to go through this.
Yeah.
In Kazakhstan, I heard that it was easier. So like, forget it. I'm going to Kazakhstan. Out of here. And, you know, I spent 5 months hitchhiking across China, and people were amazing. It was a fantastic experience, but there was no singular, more stressful country because of just the cultural difference. There's such a huge cultural difference.
Big gap there.
Massive. They are here, we are here, polar opposites. Completely. in every aspect.
Wow.
In Malaysia, they were colonized by Brits and Dutch and Portuguese. All of Southeast Asia had been colonized by certain European countries. Therefore, they have some European influence. Thailand traded with all those countries. European influence. India, colonized by Britain longer than any country. You know, Central Asia was colonized by Russia and then Soviet Union. So all of them have some kind of European background. Influence, I should say.
Right,
sorry.
yeah.
China, Japan, Korea, it's a different kettle of fish. China especially. And I don't know, I just had a really hard time. I'm out on the street with a sign that has Mandarin symbols, you know,
Right.
to get from one place to the next.
Yeah. And you had to figure that out.
Yeah, well, I just look on the map and draw it.
Right.
But yeah, it was tough. So, you know, I was like, let's go to Kazakhstan, let's experience a new country and see if I can work this out. And I did. It was tough, but I worked it out. And then 1 week before I get going again, door closes, border closes,
Yeah.
city closes.
Now you're stuck.
You're not allowed out of your apartment. You're allowed 1 kilometer away from your apartment. You got to carry around this piece of paper to prove to the military that are out on the street.
Oh.
It was really tough the first 7 weeks. They were really, really strident. But after that 7 weeks, never mind. People were wearing their masks on their head.
Yeah, right.
Because they were told, this is what I love about certain parts of the world, they're told to do something, so they'll do it.
Right.
You know, like, you have to wear a mask. No problem.
Right. You didn't say it had to be over my mouth.
Right. And,
Yeah, okay.
And the
Like a
odd
little
person.
kid.
Yeah.
Don't cross that line. Just touch it. Just touch it there, yeah.
But it's a form of rebellion as well, right?
Yeah.
Which I really appreciate, you know. And you're doing what you're told, but you're also doing, you know, what needs to be done
You
in
do
order.
it your way.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody's going to push me around.
If you rock the boat too hard, you will get into some serious mud.
We've seen that.
So, you know, still you got to live your life, right? And I don't know about you, man, but it was really hard to breathe with one of those things over my nose.
Yeah. I wasn't a fan of it, but I did it.
Yeah, we had to do it.
We
right?
had to do it. But
I mean, I didn't in Kazakhstan, but
Yeah.
after I left there.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, that would have been quite an experience for sure. Now you've circled back and you're back to Sarnia. Is Sarnia home?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom lives down the street. Got a couple aunts out in countryside.
Yeah.
Grandparents.
Home
passed
base,
away.
maybe.
Yeah, I guess. But again, it just doesn't really. I don't know. It's hard. I would have said, if you would have asked me this question before I came back, I would have said yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But now that I'm back, I'm really not sure.
Not sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're here, and what are you doing here?
Well, I originally came back, because I was burnt out. It's been 15 years.
Yeah.
125,000 kilometers hitchhiked.
Wow, that's amazing.
I walked about 5,000 kilometers. So Taiwan, I walked the east coast of Taiwan, south coast, a chunk of the south coast of Turkey, from Rome to Istanbul.
Mm-hmm.
That was 2,000 kilometers, took me 4.5 months. And then 900 kilometers across Spain, and then half of Portugal. So I did all that by foot,
Wow.
incrementally.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was. The first one was weird. It was like, so I'm going to walk across a country. Okay. And it's like a flat road. Like, usually you would go hiking up mountains.
Right.
You know, like, go get some landscape.
Well, that's what we hear hiking. That's kind of what we think of.
And the idea of walking across this country on a, you know, flat as a board, straight as an arrow kind of trail, I just thought this is going to be insanely boring. But it was the complete opposite. I met so many people from around the world who were at a crossroads in their life. Mine was an ex-girlfriend that decided she wanted to have a kid, and I wasn't responsible enough because I was married to the road. Fair enough to her. She probably wasn't wrong. I was just hoping that the two of us could go together,
Yeah.
but she had other plans.
Yeah.
We had gone together across some parts. We were together a bit more than a year. But so when we broke up, I kind of went into a downward spiral, and I was thinking about coming back to Canada. Because at this point it was about 5 years overseas, 5 or 6 years, and I'm working illegally in Europe. I'm overstayed. If I get caught the next day, I'm going back to Canada.
Right.
I really didn't know what I was doing. I was serving tables. I wasn't cooking anymore. I did cook in a little pub kitchen at the same time to help out the cook so he could have 2 days off.
Okay.
But I mean, I was like deep frying schnitzels.
Right. That sounds fun.
I was doing $100 steaks beforehand, right?
Right.
And now I'm deep frying schnitzels. So I was like, what am I doing? Like, what is the point of this now? I've traveled. I've had a great time. I've lived as the backpacker. I get it. It was great. I learned a lot. But what now? And I remember meeting a girl in India, and she told me about this Camino de Santiago in Spain. So I went, and people cried on my shoulder. Total strangers. You know, we start talking about something, and then their personal life comes up, and they just start rinsing it out.
Funny how we open up to strangers more sometimes, right?
And it's that way. It's the Camino.
Yeah.
It brings it out of people because they know that's what they're going there for.
Yeah.
It's like seeing a psychiatrist in a way. It really is. I heard numerous people saying, you know, if anybody suggested going to see a psychiatrist, I would tell them, go walk the Camino.
Right.
And I don't know, it was really something that I needed to rejuvenate my purpose on the road.
You must be a patient man.
I'd like to be.
Yeah. Well, because I say that because I know, like, when I go anywhere, like I ride a motorcycle, right? You know, so I like the open road thing, but I want to
going much faster.
But I want to get there, right? I want to get there. Like,
but it's like, the process.
I'm still that kid that says, "Are we there yet?" Like, you know,
yeah.
I mean, in a car, on a motorcycle, I don't care how long it takes, but so I would think one would have to be super patient. And there's always that unknown, like, where's my next meal?
Oh, man. Sometimes there was that, but in Europe, there was always a next meal.
Yeah.
There was no worry about that. In Asia, always a next meal. In Africa, always a next meal. The place where I would worry about the next meal is here.
Isn't that interesting, eh? Yeah.
Like, literally.
Wow.
There's no way that somebody walking across Italy is going to starve.
Is there, boy, I wish I had 2 hours with you today, but do we North Americans, do we think we're it above the rest?
I'm sorry, but I really think that.
Yeah.
I think I didn't realize the entitlement of myself until I came back. And then I was like, wow, I am really entitled. Like, when I was in Kazakhstan, the hardest things that I dealt with were things that didn't meet my expectations because I thought things were better here. Oh. Like, I would compare. I'd be like, why do people do this here? Why can't they do it like that where I'm from? And then I come back and I realize we do the same thing.
Right.
Like, I don't know what I was comparing to. It was insane. And it was the only thing it was my entitlement.
Wow.
You know, and so I'm grateful for that I came back and I witnessed that. But yeah, I think there is a very low level. I'm not saying I had a really hard time with accountability teaching English in Kazakhstan and Turkey because the Asiatic shame and honor culture that exists makes it very hard for people to be accountable. It's just a way that culture has been for thousands and thousands of years. It will be that way forever. Shame, honor. You either honor your father or you shame your father. So if you admit to the shame, then your family disowns you.
Wow.
So I'm not taking accountability for anything. And then you put in the Soviet Union, where it's like, okay, we're in communism or socialism, whatever, and you're in charge of this job, and something goes wrong. No way, it's not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. Mm-hmm. So you're trained all of life not to be accountable. And I found that really, really hard because I try to be as accountable as possible. Mm-hmm. But coming back here, I see that's another thing, that people are just not really that accountable for their actions. Like, it's all Justin Trudeau's fault.
Right. Yeah. What is the government going to do to fix it for us?
Yeah, and like
instead of fixing it ourselves or trying to.
And these people that I've lived with in Africa, man, their system is so crap.
Yeah.
Like, the corruption in West Africa is unbelievable.
Yeah. And
they never complain about the government because it's not going to get them anywhere.
Right. Fair enough. Well, I got to wrap things up here, but I'll tell you, somebody I think you should meet or connect with is Chris Hall. Do you know who Chris Hall is?
No.
So he's traveling the world. He's home right now, but in Sarnia, but on his motorcycle.
Oh, okay.
And very similar stories, and
cool.
You two would have a lot to talk about for sure.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that somebody else in Sarnia. That's the other thing. I'm like trying to find the travelers.
Yeah, I'll connect you with him for sure.
Yeah, great.
And I know he'll love to talk with you, and I would love to talk with you even more. But thank you so much for your time here. And I really didn't have to do much this time, folks, except listen. You tell a great story.
Thanks. And I want to plug my book a little bit.
Absolutely.
More.
Go ahead.
The book is called Relish in the Tread. Double meaning. Relishing the treads of your boot, or the relish that gets stuck in the tread of your boot.
Right. Gotcha.
And it's a fiction. It's not a travelogue. I've been pigeonholed as a traveler's writing his book. It's not that. It's a story of life and minimalism.
Okay.
And I think it's important that we look at minimalism as a solution to some of our problems. We don't have to have everything. And I think that's the main core moral inside of that book.
Okay.
I lived a long time walking across Europe, living out of my backpack with 12 kilos. And so I used that to tell a story of minimalism. Mm-hmm. That's the essential thing. And you can get it at Hood's bookstore. Hood's across from Piccadilly's.
Okay.
They're going to carry it for me, and also at the Bookkeeper, and then online on Amazon.
I'll look forward to getting a copy and reading that.
I hope I hear some good feedback.
As soon as it's out, let me know, and I will make sure that everybody who watches the show sees that.
I was saying April 1st, but I don't think I'm going to meet that deadline.
Okay.
So.
Well, we'll look for it. Thanks again so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Really
Thanks
appreciate
a lot. Appreciate it.
There's Steve Hunter, at least what we got out of him in this hour, and we'll check him out some more. We'll put some links in for the book so where you can get that as well. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for hearing us out.
Steve, thanks so much for your time, and once again, be sure to follow him online on his Instagram and check him out for sure. We'll post that in the comments section so you can check him out. And his book, when it comes out, I will be going to one of the bookstores to pick that up when it's available. He's going to let me know, and then you'll know that it's available. I'm really looking forward to that read and looking forward to staying in touch with you, Steve. Thanks so much for your time. And to all of you for watching, as always, that's all the time I got for you this week. Have a great week and an even better weekend. I will see you next time right here on the show. Bye for now.